So, a problem that I have noticed within my classroom, a little background information. I teach fifth grade in Bullitt County Public Schools, and something that we have discussed in prior PLCs has been students' inability to know their math facts fluently. And so, we've talked about possible solutions to that problem and some interventions that we could do. But I did focus my signature project on the research behind math fluency and then also some interventions that we could do within the classroom, and then sharing those interventions with my colleagues at our PLCs. And so my research focused on multiplication fluency specifically, not anything to do with addition, subtraction, or even division. At the fifth grade level, students' inability to know their multiplication facts hinders them significantly with other aspects of the math content that we're covering. And so that's specifically what my project focused on. I'm currently not at work due to being on maternity leave. And so I was sharing this information with my direct teammate, and then she implemented some of the strategies that I focused on and then shared them within our PLC and then relayed the information back to me. So it's a little bit of a different situation, but we were able to get some useful information and some feedback on some stuff that we could do moving forward in the future. So my slideshow has our vision statement, our meeting agenda, and then the specific problem that we focused on was fifth grade students are not fluent in multiplication facts 1 through 12. This lack of fluency hinders their ability to perform additional mathematical computations. This lack of skill is slowing growth in other areas of math that could be resolved more easily if students had basic multiplication understanding. I did use an article from research done on UCubed, and it focused on the idea that memorization is not the best route to take when we're concerned about math fluency, and therefore we should be focusing on number sense and ways to understand numbers as whole units instead of just simply memorizing. So the first intervention that we opted to do was the use of math cards. Those are a little different than the idea of a flashcard. Um, Sorry, I've got a little bit of a cold. This activity aims to match cards that have the same numerical answer, but they're shown through different representations. So, unlike traditional flashcards, when it will say what's, 9 times 4, and then you flip the card to the back and it tells you the answer, this will give you a card like that. But then in addition, it might have dice with, 9 groups of 4. It might have dominoes with 4 groups of 9. It might have you add the totals up. So it might be dominoes with 4 on each domino, and there's 9 of them. And so students are grouping them based on the understanding that they all equal the same thing versus them simply memorizing that 9 times 4 is equal to 36. The second intervention that we focused on was a game called How Close to 100, and it's played with partners. They get 100 or a blank 100 grid, and then they roll a dice, and then the number that they come up with, they put it on an array. So for example, if they roll a 2 and a 6, they create a 2 by 6 array, and they try to fill the entire grid, that 100 grid, with their computations that they came up with based on the dice that they rolled. And the first student to get as many filled in as they can, or obviously 100 would be the goal, they would win that round. The idea is that they are understanding that we have groups of something. So one of the things that is really challenging for students who don't have an understanding for multiplication is that they don't understand that it's groups of something, right? So if we have 5 times 3, that's 5 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 5. And that's a struggle for them. And even completing them on an array where we do, 3 down and 5 across or vice versa is something that they can't quite grasp still when they struggle with it. So this is a good strategy for them to not only figure out the answers, but also to see them as arrays, which is something that they kind of struggle with if they didn't get that skill when they were learning about it in second and third grade. I did focus specifically on just 7 students versus an entire class. For one, I wasn't the one implementing it, so it was more challenging for my teammate to be able to find the time to do both, since I wasn't there in person to be able to do it. And so my pre-data analysis focuses on 7 students, and we only did multiplication facts 3 through 8. And I determined a baseline by having my teammate give them a timed multiplication test, and any student that did not score 80% or higher would be considered not fluent, and then we did interventions with those students. Um, the post data analysis did show that there was an improvement in fluency over the period of time that we did it. We did it for a 5-day period, so students were able to show a better understanding of number sense in general with the numbers 3 through 8. So whenever we had PLC the following week, um, we shared those interventions with the remainder of the 5th grade team, and then we had conversations about just implementing whole group math talks across the board, just giving number sense conversations with students, and then how it would also be beneficial. We have something called clinic time, which is a 30-minute block of time at our school that we specifically use for interventions. And so it's up to the classroom teachers to determine what interventions need to be in place, what students need to get pulled, and what content they're doing it in. So, specifically for math, we did talk about how rather than focusing on a specific standard that we're working on, it might be beneficial for some of those kiddos who are still really struggling with number sense to get number talks during that math block time, and to do some of these interventions during that time in a more small group setting, to help improve those skill sets, because the theory is that if we can get them to understand the multiplication fluency as a whole, that they may then be able to solve those higher leveled skills and standards that they're not quite reaching. Because if we're talking about their ability to multiply multi-digit numbers, they're not going to be very successful at that if they can't multiply single digit numbers by single digit numbers. So we wanted to see if those kiddos, instead of giving them, for example, multi-digit multiplication practice in a small group setting, well, let's give them single digit by single digit multiplication practice during a small group setting. And then if they can build an understanding of that, they can use that skill set and that knowledge that they've gained from there and apply it to a more complex understanding of it. So those are our next steps on what we're going to do with those kiddos who are still showing some struggles in their multiplication understanding. And then we're going to reconvene um, in the next couple months toward, I guess around spring break, so not month, and discuss how's it going. Do we need additional interventions? Are we ready to, move on to a different set of interventions, or are these doing what we want them to do? So it was beneficial overall for students to practice those number sense skills.